further to what you've said, I'd also like to highlight that I am here in my capacity as thanks a lot, as the Financial Planning Institute ambassador. Even though I'm employed by Old Mutual Corporate, I do pro bono activities, pro bono in the sense that, without being paid, but doing good for the community. And in that instance, we earn continuous development points. My colleague Blessing is here. He knows about those kind of things. So um, bear with me. I'm not here to, most people, when you talk of Old Mutual, they think you're here to sell policies. I'm not going to sell any policy. I'm here on an independent basis, here to empower the brothers, and the knowledge is, it's, basic. There's no rocket science, and it creates a good platform for you to succeed. So I'm really privileged to share a bit of knowledge. So again, there is a lot of things that are happening on the regulatory side. There's a Financial Services Conduct Authority, which regulates advice that is given to consumers. So for an advisor to give financial advice, he or she needs to have an FSP license. So I need to qualify that I'm not I'm not practicing as a financial advisor. So I'm going to, I know Comrade Sibu was going to type the website where you can find a certified financial planner. So let's get into the purpose of today. I've compiled a couple of slides. We may not go through them all at once. So I'm going to give you a basic to think about. So first of all, I'd like to liken the medicine to financial education. When you're sick, you are offered medicine to cure your sickness. But pumping yourself with medicine will not help if you don't eat right. So you don't only pump yourself with medicine, you need to change your habits. So similarly, if you're facing a financial struggle, you attend webinars and forums like this to gain more on financial literacy. But gaining financial literacy does not do much if you do not change your habits. So I'm here to encourage brothers to start changing habits. Sibu? So why am I here? It makes sense to look at the reality that we are currently facing. So the landscape and reality check. And this I'm going to do via a survey that we conduct at Old Mutual. And that survey depicts the consumer's behavior towards financial products and their habits in terms of spendings and their level of indebtedness. So it's better to be informed so that you can take informed decision. And then later on, we move into how do you balance your life? How do you prioritize with all these challenging aspects of life? And how do you reach your financial goals? Then we move into personal financial management. And then after all that has been said and done, what is a logical approach? So by the look of things, I'll only today cover the survey, and then we will open it up for discussion. And because this forum has got a platform where we need to serve the Lord. What is the Bible saying in relation to what I'm going to talk about? So this is a further agenda and my approach. I'm quoting Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7, which says, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender." And I'm going to apply this verse in terms of the principle of compound interest. Because compound interest says, if you earn it, then you are rich. If you are a slave to the lender, to the bank, then you will remain a slave for life. So the choice is yours. Do you want to earn a compound interest, or do you want to pay it? There's a difference between earning and paying. And it's better to earn the compound interest than paying the compound interest. So that's one agenda item. Second agenda item is Romans 8, verse 13. It says, "Owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law." This talks to being indebted. So we need to try to limit our debt levels. And one key survival technique is to ensure that you have an emergency fund, so that you can be able to tap into the emergency fund when your livelihood is challenged. This is what we saw last year when the pandemic hit. The last agenda item is Luke chapter 14, verse 28, which says, "For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it?" This talks to budgeting. So budgeting doesn't have to be a painful exercise. You have to be quite, purposeful in terms of how you want to use your hard-earned income. So, brethren, as an investment specialist, I'm quite passionate about what's happening in the investment. So I thought I'll just share with you the investment environment and the mood. Because as we are gathered here, we are somewhat exposed to the share market. And the share market is sensitive to the sentiment around us. And you may either have a unit trust or a pension fund or have a life insurance policy. You are exposed to the market. So let's look at what the market has done over the 12 months. Or before I get into the market, they say a picture tells 1,000 words. So I want to depict two words that have been used last year. The two words was COVID, and the second one, the second one was pandemic or unprecedented. Talking about unprecedented, the next slide shows how the market has performed since March of last year. So over the past 12 months, we've experienced the fall of the market, we've experienced the recovery of the market, we've experienced a flat market, and we ended December very strong. This is as a result of what has been happening with vaccines and the packages that have been pumped into the system. So right now, as we speak, the market is optimistic. And as I indicated earlier on, it is really sensitive to the sentiments. If we move to the next slide. So what is happening in South Africa is as a result of what is happening in the global markets and in emerging markets. So right now, if you are given 3 newspapers to read, I would first read the Financial Times of the global markets, then read the Business Day, and if there's time, read the Daily Sun. So I wouldn't be concerned about what's happening in South Africa because what's happening in South Africa is as a result of the global markets. And they usually say when the USA sneezes, the whole world catches flu. But because South Africa is a small player, we catch pneumonia. So it's very important for you to consider global markets. Next slide, Sibun. So I just wanted to give you a feel of what the global market and the emerging markets have been doing in terms of the financial landscape. And now let's drill into the 2020 All Mutual Savings and Investment Monitor. It was carried out since 2008, and it's a survey of all metropolitan working South Africans. So every year we conduct a survey of more than 1,000 individuals who are working, and we try to ascertain the saving and investment behaviors and attitude. Let's look at what the results have shown for 2020. Bear in mind, it was during the pandemic. So the first question that was asked is, what words come out of your mind when thinking about the state of our country? So the biggest words that came out was crime, corruption, the economy, poverty, unemployment. So these were highlighted as the huge challenges for 2020. So it makes sense for us to depict what is really driving us to behave the way we do. The second question that was asked is, what is the confidence in the South African economy? So the question was, do you feel confident about the SA economy? And since 2015, the percentage have been quite varied, but in 2020, 34% of people who were surveyed felt confident about the South African economy. It is a drop from last year, not last year, from 2019, where 44% were feeling confident. So last year, less of us were feeling confident about the SA economy. Next slide, yeah. So 58% of us were satisfied with the way the government is handling the COVID-19 situation. So it's up to you to determine whether 58% is a good number, but I believe anything above 50% is quite credible. So there is some confidence in the way we're handling COVID-19 situation. Satisfaction about your financial situation. This is over the past couple of years. You can see that out of a score of 10, only 5.3% were satisfied, or rather 5.3 out of 10 were satisfied about their financial situation. It's quite a low number compared to 2015, 2014, where 6.5 out of 10 were satisfied about the financial situation. So these numbers, gentlemen, you may use them to your advantage to say, maybe I'm not the only one. So if you still feel that you are not satisfied about your financial situation, 5% people out of 10 are in the same situation. Income status, 5% felt the positive impact. They are earning more than before, so it's a very low number. The impact of COVID, I'm earning the same as before, 38%. A whole 57% were negatively impacted. So the pandemic has really caused havoc. This is also, to say, how do you as an individual compare to the statistics? Next, Sibun. So the question asked was, is your financial situation worse than a year ago? So 48% of the people who were surveyed, they feel that their financial situation was worse than 2019. State of finances, we find that there was an increased dipping into savings compared to 2019. A whole 52% of people surveyed had to dip into their savings to make ends meet. And 37% have fallen behind on household bills. So this is just a demonstration of how difficult the situation has been last year. Next one. let's look at dependency. So we surveyed people in terms of how dependent are they from for survival or from different angles. So if we look at other adult dependencies, excluding spouses and partner, so 52% of us were depending on other adults for survival. It's quite a high number of us who were depending on other people for survival. Next slide. And then we also speak about the all mutual sandwich generation indicator. What is an all mutual sandwich generator? These are individuals who support their immediate family as well as support their parents as well as their siblings. So we've seen an increase from last year from 34% to 42%. So as we sit here as brothers, 42% of us are supporting our own families as well as extended family and our parents. So this information that I'm giving you, brethren, helps to understand the environment that we are currently facing. The debt level has also escalated. Next slide. So personal loans have escalated higher from 2019, and these are, various areas of loans, and 43% is quite a high exposure to loans, and these are loans from the bank. So people are more indebted this year than last year, and this helps to really understand the situation so that you can face your situation with informed data. Next slide. 32% of people have fallen behind. They are no longer able to pay a financial institution. We also saw an increase from micro lender, those guys who have got unscrupulous repayment terms. And we also saw an increase of personal loan from our own friends and family. And if we move to the next slide, we will also find that, there were other dependencies that have led into the debt spiraling higher. Sibu? So post-COVID buying. So we also, because it was a pandemic era that we were interviewing these consumers, we looked at how their spending patterns have changed as a result of COVID. So it is clear that a high percentage of buying behavior has been for essential costs, food and groceries, and the nice to haves have really been squeezed. So the priorities and luxuries, we don't want to mention all those kind of extramural activities. So, the survey shows exactly the position under which we have been exposed to. With that information, what do we do? Yeah, next slide. What do we do with that information? Is to tackle the agenda items that I've highlighted. Let's look at the power of compound interest. As I indicated, you have the choice. To quote Albert Einstein, he says, "He who understands compound interest earns it, and he who doesn't understand compound interest pays it." So you have a choice. Do you want to understand the compound interest, or do you want to pay it? And there is a pain of paying the interest, especially on loan, because if you pay interest based on compound interest, it means that you are actually a slave to your lender. So for those mathematicians in the house, this is how the eighth wonder of the world is calculated. I won't go through the formula in detail, but all I need to highlight is that the compound interest is sensitive to time. So you need patience. The earlier you save, the better, because compound interest is beneficial if you are patient and leave the money to earn interest on top of interest. So compound interest is a magic because it earns you interest on top of of your interest. For my nephew, it's a revision for Finance 101. Okay, looking at what makes it a wonder. So I've categorized it into 4 blocks. The compound interest is a great equalizer. It affects everyone the same, and importantly, time is the common theme. So again, it creates millionaires out of us. For example, if you save 5,000 rands per annum at the age of 25, that 5,000 rand and leave it, it will be 2.4 million when you reach age 65. This is assuming that 5,000 rand earns interest or growth of 10%. So, gentlemen, this really is an eighth wonder. So the 4th block, it says it teaches you patience, as I indicated, compound interest. The power of that is witnessed when you are patient. You don't see the results overnight. It may be a boring and, to watch the paint dry, but patience does pay. And again, it also speaks to chopping and changing. You don't need to chase the market. You don't need to chase the pyramid schemes to try and become a millionaire. You really need that patience. The reason that most of us go for pyramid schemes is because we want to get quick bucks. We want to get rich quicker. And if you use a compound interest, you don't need to be swayed towards those kind of unscrupulous platforms. So let's look at, checklists through the storm of this compound interest. The advice is to put money into a savings account as soon as birth is confirmed. And so this is talking about, for those of us who may still plan to bring loved ones to earth. As soon as birth is confirmed, it makes sense to put money aside for that little one. And as I indicated, the compound interest will work wonders over time. The other approach, if down to limit your financial obligation, do not expose yourself to high debt, because as I indicated, if you don't understand compound interest, you become a slave to that debt. You need to compile a comprehensive financial plan. Don't put yourself under pressure by keeping up with the Mutsipes of this world, the Kumalos of this world. When you see your neighbor driving the most expensive car, leave them be, and stick to your plan. Prioritize and learn to say no. So managing your debt is quite critical. So is there a formula? Yes, keep up with the Sekese. No ways, I'm not yet there. I'm still building up. Okay, so failing to plan is planning to fail. So I've got a formula that I'd like to you to consider. And it's a very simple formula which says that when you are faced with a cash flow every now and then, you need to divide your cash flow into a 50, 20, 30 budget. What does it mean? 50% of your income should be to meet your fixed expenses. Your fixed expenses, this refers to repayment of a bond, it refers to transport fees, it refers to groceries, these are fixed costs. Then the remainder, 20 to 30%. 20% can be used for, this is to say, assuming that your debt level is affordable, 20% of your income can be used for your enjoyment. So what I'm trying to say is a budget is not restrictive, only if you stick to a particular rule. Do not spend more than you earn. So this 50, 20, 30 is a principle that you can adopt to manage your budget successfully. So if you are highly indebted, ensure that 30% of your income is used to pay off the debt. So the 20 to 30 can be flexible to according to your situation. If your debt level is affordable, you can afford to take yourself to go for a holiday or to splash out. So a budget does not have to be painful. You can spend, I think, what I'm trying to say is a budget gives you a license to spend. If you don't have a budget, you don't have a license to spend. You're actually being a responsible brother. Let's look at the balanced life. I have taken cure from the psychologist. Let's go to the next slide in terms of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a psychological concept which says for you to achieve the highest self-actualization level of the likes of Motsepe or who's that guy who maybe I can mention the recent guy who plays golf, the philanthropist of this world. Before you reach that level, you need to ensure that your physiological needs, your safety, your food, your belonging needs are met before you actually act as if you are up there. So the basic needs are quite crucial. And on the second right-hand side, this is meant for the young ones. They regard Wi-Fi as the basic need. But right now, I believe Wi-Fi is a basic need. So again, you can debate that. But what I'm trying to say is you need to prioritize where your life is. Do not reach out for the top when your bottom is still struggling. So if I apply it to financial principles, before you invest, you need to ensure that your income is able to meet your expenses and you've got safety in terms of insurance. You need to ensure that you leave a great legacy for your loved ones. This speaks to should you die, and you need to ensure that your credit worthiness is up to standard, because if your credit worthiness is not up to scratch, you won't be able to be afforded the financial access in the future. So, brethren, before you invest, ensure that the basics are covered. And again, don't invest for the sake of investing. You need to have a reason for investing. Is it for short-term needs? Is it for medium-term needs? Or is it for long-term needs? And there's also a difference between saving and investing. If you are saving, you are investing for short-term needs like schooling, or maybe if your daughter is about to get married, this is savings. But if you invest, you are investing for the long term, and you can be able to take that extra risk. Next slide. So at the end of the day, we as brethren, we need to ask ourselves, what is our legacy? What are we trying, what type of legacy do we want to leave behind? And for you to have a credible legacy, you need to ensure that you've got, estate planning is in order. If you have got a business in place, is there a business succession plan in place? Is your risk management, quite credible? Have you got a well-structured financial plan? Is your cash flow in order? Have you managed your debt quite favorably? And have you got sufficient provision for pension? Is your tax in order? And before you can distribute your wealth, you need to create a formidable wealth so that you can reach the philanthropic position. So again, these are basic necessities before you can be self-actualized. So moving on to the next slide. So Chairperson, you will guide me if we need to stop and maybe open up for discussion, or should I continue, Sibu?
Yes, we've got 4 minutes, then we will open it up.
Good stuff. So if I continue with the last agenda item, is the personal financial management, quoting the scripture, Luke chapter 14, verse 28, which says, "For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it?" This talks to budgeting. So next slide just talks about, we need to be practical in terms of, facing reality. Where do you start? Start from the beginning, and do not be shy to say, I don't have a budget. And it's an easy thing. Budget does not have to be a strenuous exercise. Once you start, it becomes a habit, and you can set up your monthly budget planner or your daily budget. I usually, advise people to put envelopes to keep your transaction slips in there. These are practical approaches towards a workable solution. Take 30 minutes out of your busy schedule to look at what's coming in and what's going out, because knowledge of your financial circumstances will enrich and empower you to take up other ventures. Next slide. So dealing with debt, as I indicated, it will hold you back. You need to ask yourself, how did I get there? There is good and bad debt. Good debt is, if you take a loan for study, is a good debt. A bad debt is if you take a loan to go overseas. The cost of credit can be crippling. You need to pause and think, make sense of your debt. One other indication that you are highly in debt is when you refuse to open your invoices, when you refuse to open that dreaded email from your lenders. Get your set your short, medium, and long-term goals. Improve your savings. And yeah, next slide. As we are about to open up for questions. Oh, this is the last slide, which is quite remarkable. And it's a 10-10 logic. The 10-10 logic says, if we move to the next slide, it says, for any decision that you have to make, ask yourself a question. Action, how will this action make me feel 10 minutes from now? Then you ask your question, how will it make me feel 10 months from now? And you make your assessment. And how will it make me feel 10 years later? So I've taken 3 examples. One is an iPad. If you look at an iPad, at a store, um, you want to decide whether to buy it or not. Ask yourself a question. How will it make me feel 10 minutes from now? Yeah, maybe it will really make me excited. I've got a fresh new iPad. Then you ask yourself a question. How will it make me feel 10 months from now? The likely response is, yeah, will I likely use it every day? Maybe not. The third question, how will it make me feel 10 years from now? Maybe I won't be using this iPad 10 years from now. How many of us are still using iPad? I'm not, I'm not thrashing iPads, but I'm just making an example to say, if you ask yourself short, medium, and long-term questions, it will make a decision easier for you to go forward. And you can apply this 10-10 principle in anything that you come across. So I don't know. I won't go through the next two examples due to time constraints. And brethren, I hope I have given you a bit of platform to think about. As you can see, this was not a sales